2:20 in the morning, and the house makes a sound. It's a hiss first, thin, steady, coming up through the floor from the hall bathroom. Then it stops. Then about 40 seconds of nothing. Then the fill valve opens and there's that low, rushing note, 10 or 12 seconds of it, and it shuts off with a small knock in the pipe. Then it starts over. You've been lying there listening to it for 3 weeks. You jiggle the handle when you go past. Sometimes that works for a day. Now I want to tell you about the other one. The one in the basement bathroom, the one nobody uses. The one that has not made a single sound since March. That's the expensive one. My name is Hollis Ward. I'm 63, born in the Missouri Ozarks and never lived anywhere else. I'm on a well and a septic tank, like a good share of you watching. And about 11 years ago, a toilet I couldn't hear cost me a well pump and very nearly cost me a drain field. And I want to make sure it doesn't happen to you. Stay with me, and you'll know the free test that tells you exactly which of 4 things is wrong in 15 minutes, tonight, without a tool in your hand. Now, the honest part about the title, and it matters here more than usual, there is a 20-cent washer, and it is a real fix, and I'll show you exactly what it is and where it goes. But it is only the answer if you have an older brass fill valve, the kind with a float ball on an arm, and that's houses from roughly the 1930s through the early 80s. If your toilet is newer than that, your answer is probably a $6 flapper, or a $3 seal kit, or a screwdriver, and no money at all. And I want to be plain about that last one, because in my experience, the single most common cause of a running toilet in this country costs 0 cents to fix, and most people never check it, and half of them go buy a part they didn't need. So the honest title would be The Free Adjustment, the 20-cent washer, or the $6 flapper, and how to know which one in 15 minutes. That doesn't fit on a thumbnail, but that's the video. Let's talk about what it's actually costing, because on a city water bill it's one thing, and out here it's something else entirely. The Environmental Protection Agency, through its WaterSense program, puts household leaks in this country at close to 1 trillion gallons a year. Their figure for an average household is around 10,000 gallons annually, and they estimate about 1 home in 10 is losing 90 gallons a day or more. A toilet with a bad flapper commonly runs 200 gallons a day. One that's running wide open, with the flapper hung on the chain, does about 1 gallon a minute. That's 1,440 gallons in 24 hours, out of one fixture, quietly. On city water and sewer, that's a bill you'll eventually notice. $30 to $90 a month, depending on where you live. And the sewer side is usually the bigger half. But here's what it does out here, where there's no bill at all. Your well pump is not a continuous duty machine. It's designed around a certain number of starts and stops per day. A submersible pump in a residential well might expect a couple dozen cycles in a normal day, with rest in between, because the motor takes its heaviest wear in the first second of every start. A toilet that's running puts a steady, small draw on that system around the clock. So the pressure tank bleeds down, the pump kicks on, brings it back up, shuts off, bleeds down again. All night, all day, while you're at work, while you're on vacation. That's not a pump doing its job. That's a pump being started a few hundred times a day for months. It's the same thing as a truck that gets cold started every 4 minutes and never driven. It doesn't fail dramatically. It just uses up its life at 15 times the normal rate. And then one August afternoon you have no water and a $900 to $2,000 hole in the ground to deal with. And then there's the septic side, and this is the one almost nobody knows. Your drain field is sized for a certain number of gallons per day, not sewage, gallons. The soil has to accept the liquid and let it percolate away, and it needs time between doses to do that. Now put 1,400 gallons a day of perfectly clean water into it, on top of your normal household use, for 4 months. That's called hydraulic overloading. You saturate the soil. It never gets a chance to drain and re-aerate. The biological mat at the bottom of the trenches goes anaerobic and seals over, and the field stops accepting water, sometimes permanently. A new drain field in this part of the country runs $10,000 to $25,000, and there are places where you can't get a permit for a replacement on a small lot at all. So on city water, a running toilet is a bill. On a well and septic, it's a pump, and possibly the most expensive component on your property, and neither one of them sends you a warning. That's why the silent one is the expensive one. The noisy toilet gets fixed in 3 weeks because it's annoying. The silent leak in the guest bath runs from March to September. Now, 30 seconds on how the thing actually works, because once you have this, the diagnosis is obvious. There are exactly 2 valves in that tank, and they do opposite jobs. At the bottom is the flush valve, and sitting on it is the flapper, a rubber cup or flap on a hinge. When you push the handle, a chain lifts that flapper, the tank dumps into the bowl, and then the flapper falls back down and seals. Its whole job is to hold water in. Standing up beside it is the fill valve, and on older toilets it's called a ball cock. It senses the water level, opens to refill the tank, and shuts off when the level comes up. Its whole job is to let water in and then stop. And there's a third piece that isn't a valve at all, the overflow tube, that open vertical pipe in the middle. It's a spillway. If the water ever rises too high, it pours down that tube into the bowl instead of onto your floor. It's a safety device, and it is completely silent when it's working. So, a running toilet is one of exactly 4 things. 1. The water level is set above the top of the overflow tube, and the tank is quietly pouring over the spillway forever. The toilet isn't broken, it's overfilled. This is free to fix, and it is very common. 2. The flapper is leaking. Water is escaping past it from tank into bowl, so the level drops, so the fill valve wakes up and tops it off. That's your 40-second cycle at 2 in the morning. 3. The fill valve itself won't shut off completely, so it trickles in and the excess goes down the overflow. That's where the 20-cent washer lives. 4. Something mechanical. The chain is too long and got under the flapper, or too short and holds it up. The fill tube got pushed down inside the overflow tube and is siphoning. The handle is binding. 4 causes. Here's how to tell them apart in 15 minutes without buying anything. First, take the lid off and set it on a towel on the floor, flat. Those lids are heavy and they don't survive a tile floor. Look at the water level against the overflow tube. The water should sit about an inch below the top of that tube. There's usually a molded line on the fill valve or the tube marked CL for critical level. If your water is at the top of the tube or spilling into it, that's your answer, and you fix it with a screw or a clip on the fill valve, right now, for nothing. And that inch matters more than comfort, which is the part I find genuinely interesting. That gap is an air gap. It is a deliberate physical break between the water in your toilet tank and the water in your house's supply line. If the city main or your well loses pressure hard, water can be pulled backward through the plumbing, and that inch of air is what stops tank water from being drawn into the pipe you drink from. Modern fill valves are built to a backflow standard for exactly this reason, and the critical level mark is where the standard is enforced. Your toilet tank is the one place in the whole house where drinking water and not drinking water come within an inch of each other, and the only thing in between is air. So when somebody raises the water level to get a stronger flush, and people do, they aren't just wasting water, they're erasing the only barrier there is. Now, if the level is correct and it's still running, do the dye test. Put 10 drops of food coloring in the tank, any color that isn't yellow. Stir it once with your hand, then walk away for 15 minutes. And do not flush, do not use that bathroom, don't let anybody else use it. Come back and look in the bowl. If there's color in the bowl, water is getting past your flapper. That's cause number 2, and it's a flapper or a flush valve seat. If the bowl is still clear but you can hear or see water moving, it's the fill valve. Cause number 3. That's it. That's the whole diagnosis. And the EPA has been telling people to do it for 20 years, and almost nobody has heard of it. And it costs about $2 for a bottle of food coloring you already own. Which brings me to why nobody told you. I don't think there's a villain in this one. I think it's arithmetic. A plumber's minimum call is somewhere between $125 and $250 in most of the country. That's not greed. That's a truck, fuel, insurance, licensing, bonding, the drive out and the drive back, and a man's day cut into pieces. He cannot come out and put in a $6 flapper for $6. Nobody can. There has never existed a business model in which somebody drives to your house to perform an 8-minute repair on a part that costs less than a sandwich. So the small repair is structurally unsellable, which means nobody advertises it, which means nobody explains it, which means you don't know it's small. Then walk the parts aisle and look at how it's laid out. Flappers are at eye level, in bright blister packs, with the word Universal on them. The fill valve rebuild kits, the little bags with a diaphragm seal in them, are down on the bottom shelf where you have to squat. And the assorted rubber washers, the bin with the 20-cent parts in it, is in a completely different aisle, over with the hose fittings, in a drawer. So a man walks in with a running toilet and walks out with a flapper, because that's the thing that was at eye level and had the word Universal on it. And about a third of the time that isn't what was wrong, and it still runs, and now he's confident the toilet itself is bad. Which is the actual sale, $200 to $400 for the fixture, plus installation, and he'll be told it's an old toilet, and he might as well. And sometimes that's true. And sometimes he just replaced a whole toilet because he couldn't find a washer. And out here, remember, there's no bill arriving to tell anybody any of this is happening. If you're on a well and you've had a pump go early, or you've had drain field trouble, tell me in the comments how old the system was. I'd like to know how often a running fixture turns out to be sitting underneath it, because I suspect it's a lot more than anybody counts. Now the parts, and I'll be specific. Food coloring, $2. That's the diagnostic, and it's the only thing I want most of you to buy, if it's the flapper. A replacement flapper runs $4 to $8. Take the old one with you to the store, because there are two common sizes now, 2-inch and 3-inch, and Universal isn't as universal as the package says. And here's the one to look for. Buy a flapper marked chloramine resistant, and I'll explain why in a minute, because it's the whole reason yours failed. If the flapper's fine and the seat under it is pitted and rough, and you'll feel that with a fingertip, there are seat repair kits for $8 to $12 that bond a new smooth ring over the old one. If it's the fill valve, and it's a modern plastic one, a seal or diaphragm repair kit is $3 to $5. A complete new universal fill valve is $10 to $15 and takes about 20 minutes. And honestly, if the valve is over 15 years old, that's the better buy. And if it's the fill valve, and it's an old brass one with a float ball on a rod, here's your washer. Inside that valve, there's a plunger with a small rubber washer on the end, or a rubber diaphragm seal under the cap, depending on the make. That's the sealing surface. It hardens, takes a groove, and stops closing all the way. A card of assorted rubber washers is $2 or $3 for a dozen, and the one you need out of that card is worth about 20 cents. That is a real repair. It is also the repair fewest of you need, and I'd rather tell you that than sell you a title. Now, why does a flapper only last 3 or 4 years when your grandfather's lasted 20? The rubber didn't get worse. The water changed. Through the late 90s and 2000s, a great many water utilities in this country switched their disinfectant from free chlorine to chloramine, which is chlorine combined with ammonia. They did it for a good reason. Chloramine is more stable in long distribution lines, and it produces fewer of the disinfection byproducts the EPA tightened rules on in 1998. It's also considerably harder on rubber. Utilities that converted saw accelerated failure of elastomer parts throughout residential plumbing, and flapper manufacturers responded by selling compounds specifically formulated to survive it. Nobody did anything wrong. Public health made a correct decision to reduce a cancer risk, and the consequence landed on a $2 piece of rubber in 10 million tanks, and no one was ever going to send you a letter about it. Now the work. And there are 2 safety notes, and one of them will save you a very bad evening. Before you turn that little shut-off valve under the toilet, know where the main shut-off for your whole house is. Go find it right now. On a well that's usually at the pressure tank, because old chrome-plated angle stops that have never been turned in 30 years have a real habit of not sealing when you finally turn them, or starting to weep at the packing nut. If that happens and you don't know where your main is, you're now holding a running valve with a phone in your other hand. Second, do not over-tighten anything on a porcelain tank. Tank bolts, the fill valve lock nut, all of it. Hand tight, and then a small nudge. Porcelain does not bend, it cracks. And a cracked tank at 10 at night turns a $6 job into a flood and a new toilet. And if your toilet or its brass fittings predate 1986, when federal law first limited lead in plumbing, just wash your hands when you're done handling old brass. That's all. The work itself. Shut the stop off, flush, and hold the handle to drain the tank. Sponge out the last inch. Then swap the part in question, which for a flapper is unhooking 2 ears from the overflow tube pegs and clipping a new one on. 30 seconds. Turn the water back on slowly. Let it fill. Set the level to an inch below the overflow tube and watch it for 5 minutes. Then repeat the dye test the next day to confirm. That's the step everybody skips, and it's the only proof you're done. Now the mistakes, and the first one is the big one.
Drop-in tablets. The blue or white chlorine tablets people put in the tank to keep the bowl clean. Those sit in there dissolving into concentrated bleach 24 hours a day, an inch away from every rubber part in the system. They destroy flappers, fill valve seals, and the tank-to-bowl gasket. And most manufacturers will tell you they void the warranty. If you have one in there right now, take it out. That is very possibly the entire reason you're watching this video. Jiggling the handle as a permanent solution. That's a chain length problem announcing itself. Buying a flapper without doing the dye test. Raising the water level to get a better flush. Covered that. Bending the float arm on an old brass valve to adjust it, which people do, and which fatigues the brass and eventually snaps it. And setting the tank lid on the floor. I've broken one. They're expensive and often unavailable for older models. For upkeep, this is a 2-minute thing, twice a year. Every spring and fall, do the dye test on every toilet in the house, including the ones nobody uses, especially those. 10 drops, 15 minutes, look in the bowl. 4 toilets takes you 20 minutes once you're moving. And once a year, on a quiet night, go stand at your pressure tank if you're on a well, or listen at your meter if you're on city water. And make sure nothing is running when nothing should be running. On a city meter, there's usually a small triangle or dial that spins with any flow at all. Everybody in the house off the water, and that dial should be dead still. Here's the one thing to do, and you can do it before you go to bed tonight. Take the lid off every toilet in your house. Put 10 drops of food coloring in each tank. Write down the time. Then go do something else for 15 minutes and come back and look in the bowls. That's it. $2, no tools, and by tonight, you'll know which of your toilets is leaking, including the silent one you were never going to catch. If you find color in a bowl, take the old flapper to the store tomorrow and buy the chloramine-resistant one for $6, and you'll have it done before your coffee's cold. Next week, I'm going in on the machine this toilet has been beating on, your well pressure tank. Most of them in this county are waterlogged and running the pump twice as hard as it needs to. And you can check yours with a tire pressure gauge in about 4 minutes, and the fix is usually free. That hiss at 2 in the morning is not the problem. That's the one telling you the truth. Go find the one that's quiet.